Welcome back. This is the final part of this trilogy where I build a replica of the Trossingen Lyre. In this part we'll cover carving the bridge and the tuning pegs, finishing the surface, drilling the peg holes, kolrosing on the lid, and finally putting on the strings. There's a lot to do, so let's get started. I read somewhere once that the bridge is the heart of the instrument. It directly transfers the vibrations of the strings to the soundboard, and so it must be very hard and smooth and uniform, so that it doesn't dampen the sound. Nowadays violins usually have bridges of hard maple, but on the original Trossingen Lyre it was made from willow. I used the hardest wood I could find, which is a piece of 50-year-old birch wood from the basement of an abandoned hospital. Yeah, it's a long story. And here you can see my bridge compared to the original. For drilling the peg holes, I again did this trick where I put tape on two pieces of wood and then I glue them together with super glue to prevent the wood from splitting. Then I started drilling the holes, and now here I made a massive mistake. The drill bit I'm using is not actually meant for wood. At least not for a hand drill. Most wood drill bits have a little spike at the tip which digs into the wood and makes sure the drill bit doesn't wander around, but this bit doesn't have that. So it made no difference that I spent 20 minutes making sure the holes were all even and perfectly aligned, because the drill bit wandered and the holes got off center and wonky. For the last 3 holes here I used a thinner wood bit to make the pilot hole and then widened them with the first drill bit. Should have done that from the very beginning. Here you can see the ones on the right are totally messed up, while the left ones, where I did the pilot hole, they are straight. Anyway, with no way to fix that, I proceeded to taper the holes with a file. The file gets slightly thinner towards the tip, so when pushing and turning it in there, it gives a tapered hole, which is better for holding the tuning pegs. It does take a while, but it's a lot cheaper than buying a professional peg reamer. So for the final time, I mixed up the leftover rabbit glue with oak sawdust and made a filler. And with this I filled up the gaps left over from gluing the lid on. This was then sanded off to make everything smooth. And now, finally, the big moment. I finished the wood with raw linseed oil. of course do the same to the maple lid, but that doesn't have such an intense pattern. Now I'll show you how I carved the tuning pegs. I used the same well-aged birch wood that I used for the bridge, and here the first step was to make the tip round and thin, so that it fits in the hole. Here I also paid attention to stay very centered, so that when I then carve the shaft it doesn't become unsymmetrical. Once the peg fit into the hole, then I pushed it inward very hard, which burnishes the peg there where it makes contact. Then I carefully shave off that area, and also bring the surrounding wood down to the same level. And then I push it in again and repeat. This way I can thin it reliably and evenly without making it too thin. And it conforms to the shape of the hole. Sometimes the carving leaves it a bit rough, so then I smoothed it out with sandpaper. This is also useful when the peg makes even contact across the whole surface, so that I just need to make it a bit thinner. Now next I had to shape the other end so that it fits into the tuning key, which I also made myself from the same wood. Here the pegs are so close together that you can't easily turn them by hand, and so I decided to go with a tuning key. The square end I need to taper down so that it fits into the key. And I carved it until it was almost done and then sanded it on a flat surface to get it even and straight. Here it's still a bit on the thick side, but I think I made it even thinner later on. But for now it was fine and I could push it in with the tuning key. And then it's back to shaving down the shaft. Took me almost an hour to make this pig, and once it was done I coated it in beeswax. This makes it much smoother to turn, and as you can see it no longer makes a loud creaking sound when I push it in. And then I drilled the hole for the string. And I attached said string. Here in the beginning I used some old guitar strings to test it out and later ordered proper ones. And here's my first time playing it with all 7 strings in place. Next I drew up a pattern based on the Anundshög runestone in Sweden. I cut out one half of the pattern so that I can then trace it onto the wood. Here you can see a little test I did on an offcut of maple. Then I started to cut into the wood. This is an old carving technique called kolrosing, where the pattern is cut into the wood and a pigment like charcoal powder is rubbed into the cuts. Then the wood is burnished to close the cuts back up again and to lock in the pigment powder. Even though it is nowadays called kolrosing, a Swedish word, this is actually the very same technique which was used on the original Trossingen Lyre. So it was probably widely used in that time and does not come specifically from Sweden, as many people now assume. And when the first section was finished, I erased the pencil lines. Since the charcoal is so black, it can give the whole wood a greyish hue, and many people nowadays use coffee or cinnamon instead as a pigment. Gives a more brown and natural color. I wanted to use something a bit more local than that, so I went with chaga powder, which is a mushroom that grows on birch trees and people make tea from it. Gives a much warmer hue than charcoal and is something that's native to the area. And after rubbing it in, I erased away the loose powder, which I later realized was not the best way to go, because it also lightens the lines, not just the flat spots. And then I used a Lego piece as a template to put in the diagonal lines to give the whole pattern more contrast. The Lego piece just happened to be roughly the width I wanted, and I could see through it through the holes. I also carved in a line of runes, but that was so finicky and difficult that I did not film it. After that I burnished it with a spoon and put on another layer of linseed oil. Here you can see the finished pattern. The runes are Elder Futhark, what would have been used at the time of the original Trossingen Lyre, and I've written the beginning of a verse from the Kalevala where old Väinämöinen builds his first kantele. And finally I also put on some furniture wax to seal in the surface. While I was carving the pattern, I ordered some proper strings from Italy. They are synthetic cut and should have a more natural sound than standard guitar strings. I want to thank Michael J. King, who helped me pick them out and gave me advice on what kind of strings to get. You can find his channel in the video description. He also has some great videos on building and playing lyres. You might have also noticed all the music in this video, and the entire series was played on the very instrument you watched me build. And with that, the series is at an end. I will very soon upload videos of me playing full songs on the instrument, so if you're interested in that, then you can subscribe. And thank you for watching, and I will see you then.